Very good morning, boys and girls. So, as I told you that since these 2 days I would be traveling, I have decided to upload the lecture at the possible time to me, and therefore you can view it on the channels. I'll obviously be also sharing the link once the recording is complete and the lecture is saved on the YouTube. So, just for the sake of, and I mean, just for the sake of clarity, I'll just put forward that since these are the live sessions which are recorded on Zoom and on the YouTube live, they are saved in on my channel under the video head called as live. So you can view it there specifically. That is the only difference. So that's why I wanted to put it across. Okay, friends. So in the last lecture, we discussed the concept of the scope of supply chapter, and till a particular point in time we had discussed, and now we will proceed from that point where we last left. So just to give a quick heads up, what did we do in the last lecture? So we tried to basically understand the principal aspects of indirect taxes as such. Then I explained you how direct and indirect taxes are different, because that was our first very primitive lecture. Then uske baad humne supply as a taxable event mein what is relevant, and for levy of GST what is relevant. So we said that okay, supply being a taxable event is the most relevant thing that needs to exist. And now therefore, to understand what we mean by supply, we started our discussion with scope of supply as a chapter, that is section 7. Now, once, as I said, that once this scope of supply and the composite and mixed supply concepts are discussed completely, what we are going to do is that we will refer to your ICAI study materials, also other question and answers, question banks, just to get a heads up of these two chapters. All right. So on the lines of these basic parameters, let us start discussing the next course. So friends, हमने उस दिन ये discuss किया था that supply is having an inclusive meaning in the section 7 of the CGST Act, wherein supply means and includes all forms of supply of goods or services or both by way of sale, exchange, transfer, license, rental, lease, barter, disposal, which is made or agreed to be made for a consideration in the course or furtherance of business. So we had studied only one element of it. That means we had discussed sale as a transaction. Now we will discuss the next set of transactions, which are again like illustratively but put forward in the law. Now, once the sale of goods, I said that transfer of ownership is relevant, transfer of ownership is important. Sale of services, ke liye the service provider is committing to give some service to the service recipient. So that is the principal aspect as far as sale of services is concerned. Now, the next part is sale ke baad transfer, barter, exchange. Now, before transfer, we will get into the discussion on what you mean by barter and what you mean by exchange. Okay, so how barter and exchange are considered as supply, and accordingly how the GST levy really happens, we'll discuss that first. So as a part of scope of supply, let us try to understand barter and exchange. Okay, so friends, आपको याद है barter, when you must have studied like something about barter, maybe in your school days when you studied the history of ancient systems in India, ancient trade practices in India. That time you must have studied that okay, there is something called as barter, right? Now, as a part of this particular discussion that we had, now barter under the GST also has been specifically brought in as a category of scope of supply. So in the scope of supply, barter specifically has a express mention of it. The purpose being very clear. Now, let us take into consideration how barter is liable for GST how barter as a transaction is liable for GST. So now, technically, what does barter mean? Barter means exchange of goods for goods or services for services, or goods for services and vice versa. Right? So exchange of goods for goods, services for services, and goods for services and vice versa. That means service for goods also. Now, if you remember, when we studied barter during our childhood days, the logic behind barter system was that there was a perceived value of two things which was considered to be same. perceived value was considered to be same. So तभी probably अपने ऐसे examples पढ़े रहेंगे कि 2 kg rice के against somebody is giving you 3 kgs of dal, or say 3 kg of dal के against somebody is giving you 2 kgs of gehu. Now that was because in the eyes of the business, in the eyes of the trade, the perceived value of these two things was same. So even today, whenever there is a barter, there is an obvious thing that there will be an exchange of goods for goods, or goods for services, or services for services. But this will happen when the value of goods or services which are exchanged is believed to be same. That is to say, there is no monetary transaction over and above the goods or services exchange. ठीक है? So अभी हमको क्या देखना है? That how barter as a transaction becomes taxable under GST. So यहाँ पे हम लोग को principally एक और चीज क्या समझना है? That when I say that there is an exchange of goods for goods, service for services, under GST, how it will really operate. So now let's try to take an example, okay, in today's world. So let's say that, say Sachin has sold his laptop. Sachin has sold his laptop to Santosh, and in return, Santosh has given his iPhone mobile to Sachin. The value of both these products is rupees 50,000 each. Now see, यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है? Sachin has given his laptop, which is believed to be of 50,000 rupees, to Santosh. संतोष ने बदले में क्या किया? तो उसका आईफोन दे दिया सचिन को, जिसका भी according to him the perceived value is 50,000, and both are agreeing on this part. Now technically, why GST as a law wants to bring barter in the taxable ambit, understand? If I see from an economic point of view, in India there is a transaction happening that one person is giving his mobile phone to the other is giving his laptop to the first person, and in both these cases the value is 50,000. So technically speaking, there is one laptop, okay, there is one laptop which is being given away, जिसका कीमत है 50,000 रुपए. There is one mobile phone जो दिया जा रहा है, जिसका कीमत is also 50,000 रुपए. So technically अगर मैं देखने जाऊँ तो 1 लाख रुपीस का बिजनेस इंडिया में हो रहा है, ट्रांजैक्शन इंडिया में हो रहा है. ठीक है, वो एक दूसरे को पैसा नहीं दे रहे, वो गुड्स के बदले में गुड्स दे रहे, दैट इज ओके. Now, if 1 lakh rupees of worth as a transaction of supply is happening by way of a barter, because they are exchanging goods for goods. So the consideration for laptop is mobile, the consideration for mobile is laptop. So is hisab se there is a transaction of rupees 1 lakh happening, but since both of them do not pay money to each other, they will be like, why should we pay taxes? Because हम लोग ने एक दूसरे को पैसा तो दिया ही नहीं. And the very purpose that if such things are permitted without the taxes being levied, then people will stop paying money to each other just in order to avoid paying taxes. मतलब लोग क्या करेंगे? ठीक है यार, मैं तुमको ये गुड्स देता हूँ, तुम मुझे वो सर्विसेज दे दो, मैं आपको ये सर्विस देता हूँ, तो आप मुझे वो गुड्स दे दो. सो लेट्स से somebody like एयरटेल को मैं बोलूंगा, चलो कि आपको ऑप्टिक फाइबर केबल मैं आपको सप्लाई करता हूँ, आप मुझे बदले में सिम कार्ड्स एंड ये मोबाइल सर्विसेज दे देना. So in this case, that nobody will give goods and services to each other, or rather money to each other, and सिर्फ goods and service के एक दूसरे को देके they will try to settle in the accounts. And this is obviously not going to help us, because इसमें बहुत सारा tax क्या हो जाएगा? Evasion हो जाएगा. And therefore, in order to also establish a very deep clarity as far as revenue collection is concerned, barter has been considered specifically as a aspect of scope of supply. So scope of supply includes barter. Barter में when there will be a transaction of laptop being sold for 50,000 against a mobile worth rupees 50,000, there is a total transaction of rupees 1 lakh. What does the law say? GST law इनको क्या बोलता है? GST law will tell Sachin that okay, Sachin, you have supplied the laptop worth rupees 50,000. So you are supposed to charge GST. You are supposed to charge GST at, let's suppose, 18%. सेम वे संतोष को क्या बोलेंगे? सेम वे संतोष को क्या बोलेंगे कि संतोष, आपने मोबाइल फोन बेचा है, आपने मोबाइल फोन बेचा है 50,000 का, therefore you are supposed to charge GST at 18%. And eventually, ठीक है, वो सामने वाले को हम लोग बोलेंगे कि the recipient will get the input tax credit and all. Let us leave that apart. In actual sense, what is going to happen? 18% GST दोनों ट्रांजैक्शन के ऊपर लगने से 1 लाख रुपीस के ऊपर का GST गवर्नमेंट को तो मिलेगा. Forget about the input tax credit, but गवर्नमेंट को तो 1 लाख रुपीस का GST मिलेगा. So this revenue generation otherwise would not have happened if barter was not brought in under the taxable ambit. Therefore, barter in a form of consideration for either goods or services to each other, in the course or furtherance of business, if it is happening, then definitely there will be a GST. But then what may be a scenario कि barter हो रहा है, barter एक दूसरे को दे रहे तो वही consideration हो रहा है, but there is no course or furtherance of business, and then in that case there will be no GST. Now let's say that two kids in the school, एक बच्चा दूसरे को बोलता है कि can you please lend me pencil, or rather can you please give me your pencil from the pencil box you have. I'll give you an eraser against 2-3 pencils. They're also doing it like a trade only, right? But then वो बेचारे मासूम बच्चे क्या सोचते हैं कि मैं उससे पेंसिल लिया, मैंने उसको रबर दिया. Do you think they really have any intention of business per se, or there is any intended business happening over there? It's just an exchange between two friends, two kids at the school. Or because that is also barter. Sometimes what happens is, let's say that you give one of the, say, deodorant bottles to your friend, उससे आप कोई और परफ्यूम का बॉटल ले लेते हो. Assume that वो दोनों महंगे ही है and same price के. But again, was it meant for furtherance of business or commercial activity? The answer is no. It's just a healthy exchange of things between two friends, two kids, etc. So barter keeps on happening every now and then. The only thing is that if that barter is happening for a consideration in the course or furtherance of business, then we will say that, okay, it is a transaction liable for GST. So that is the reason why when you say scope of supply, supply means and includes all form of supply by way of sale, exchange, transfer, license, rental, lease, barter, disposal. उसमें ये जो भी transaction होता है, if it is happening for a consideration one, and in the course or furtherance of business, then it is really something that we say that it will be liable for GST. Okay. All right. Now, यही example को आगे बढ़ाते हुए, rather on these lines, we'll try to discuss something called as exchange. Now, what is the only difference that is going to happen in case of exchange? Let us see. Okay. So I'll just reduce some space over here. Now, यही सचिन एंड संतोष के एग्जांपल को कैरी करते हैं, स्लाइटली उसको ट्वीक करेंगे. Now we are discussing what? Exchange. Now Sachin sold his laptop to Santosh, and in return Santosh has given him a iPhone mobile to Sachin. Now यहाँ पे मैं थोड़ा सा चेंज क्या कर रहा हूँ, that Sachin has sold his laptop to Santosh and in addition gives 20,000 rupees, and in return Santosh has given his iPhone mobile to Sachin. The value of iPhone is rupees 70,000. The value of laptop is rupees 50,000. Now see, what is the difference between barter and exchange? That exchange also means exchange of goods for goods, goods for services, services for goods, and services for services, everything. But the only difference is that the perceived value is not exactly the same. The perceived value may be different, and the balance portion of the value is generally ended up getting settled in cash portion, that is settled in monetary form. So here, what is the slight difference that we are seeing? That barter and exchange may, there was exchange of goods for goods also, yahan pe bhi. The only thing is that it was not exactly of the same value. So usme kya hona pada? That slightly the value was different. So the differential consideration was settled by money. So even under the GST law, what it says, like barter is a transaction, exchange is also a transaction which is liable for GST. So इधर क्या हो जाएगा? From Sachin's point of view, Sachin has supplied his laptop, बट सचिन को बदले में कंसिडरेशन क्या मिला है? सचिन को बदले में कंसिडरेशन मिला है आईफोन, जिसका वैल्यू है 70,000. So Sachin is supposed to charge GST on his laptop for rupees, on rupees 70,000. Let's say at the rate of 18%. Likewise, Santosh has supplied his phone, his iPhone, for a laptop जिसका मार्केट वैल्यू कंसिडर किया जा रहा है 50,000 रुपए, प्लस उसको क्या मिल रहा है? ही इज गेटिंग 20,000 रुपीज इन कैश. देयरफॉर यहाँ पे भी द जीएसटी व्हाट संतोष इज गोइंग टू चार्ज, जीएसटी विल बी एप्लीकेबल on rupees, GST will be applicable on rupees 70,000 at the rate of 18%. So now see what is a moot point over here. If barter and exchange transactions are not brought to the taxation surface, तो ये transactions market में होते रहेंगे and इनके ऊपर कभी revenue collection होगा ही नहीं. And then we may end up losing so much of revenue because we are not having any barter, we are not having any exchange which is under the purview of taxability. Then we are going to end up losing so much of revenue in that case. So the very purpose why scope of supply very specifically includes barter and exchange is for this reason. Okay, is it clear? I hope it is. So I'm moving now further. So I am just giving you 20 seconds time कि ये Zoom का जो मैंने जो भी whiteboard पे लिखा हुआ है, if you want to take a screenshot of that, please take it. Okay, I'm moving further. Now, let us see next. Now, what do you mean by, now there are certain terms like license, rental, lease, which are more or less, or rather, we'll first talk about rental and lease for that matter. Now, how rental and renting and leasing are supplies, let us try to understand. So, in usual circumstances, I'm saying, not every time, because rental and lease ये जो words है ना, colloquially बहुत अलग-अलग तरीके से use किए जाते हैं. But technically दोनों में एक common aspect क्या है? That without transferring the ownership, when you are transferring the possession of something, it may be movable goods, it may be immovable property. For a consideration, then we call it as rental or leasing. Usually lease, when it is of a property, or usually lease as a word is more associated with an immovable property. But I know that there are certain mechanisms of car leasing, there are mechanisms of asset leasing. So ऐसा नहीं है कि it is necessarily sticking to that. We are just saying that in general senses, lease is a word more associated with immovable property. Now, whether you talk about leasing from a movable property perspective or immovable property perspective, renting is again जब हम लोग बोलते हैं मैंने घर रेंट पे लिया, मैंने शॉप रेंट पे लिया, So actually speaking, we use both the words interchangeably. Now in both these aspects, what is common is that whether it is renting or whether it is leasing, in both the cases, the owner of the goods or the owner of the immobile property is disassociating himself with these assets, with these goods, and he allows somebody else to use it for a consideration. Now, if I am renting, let's suppose, now we are talking about that in today's era, we have renting of furniture, we have renting of clothes, शादी के कपड़े पे भी rent पे जाते. So if I'm renting clothes, if I'm renting furniture, if I'm, let's say, renting my entire car on Zoom car or something like that, I am allowing somebody else to use my vehicle, my car, my furniture for a consideration. In such case, it should be considered as supply of goods on rental basis, against a consideration. And of course, if it is done in the course of furtherance of business, it will be treated as supply. Now, for instance, you give your bike to your friend because 2 days he doesn't have his own bike. Now, what is missing over here? Are you collecting any rent from him? No. Are you doing it in the course of furtherance of business? No. So you did part away with your own goods, but it was not for a consideration. It was not in the course of furtherance of business. So it is not a supply in accordance with the provisions of section 7(1) of the CGST. But यही अगर मैंने furniture rent पे दिया for a period of 1 year, I am taking a monthly rent for that furniture, then I will be liable to pay GST on that rental. Clear enough? Fair. Now, when I say leasing of land, leasing of building, leasing of warehouses for a period of 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, whatever may be the time frame. In such case, what we are going to say that okay, नहीं, इसमें leasing करने के basis पे ऐसा होगा कि in these cases of lease and rental, we will not be liable for, we will be liable for GST because you have rented out your space for a consideration in the course or furtherance of business. So friends, if there is a leasing or rental transaction in the course or furtherance of business, then it will be liable for GST. Now, there might be some exceptions because there are exemptions under the law. So, for instance, renting of a residential house for the residential dwelling purpose, except when it is used for any commercial purpose, means मैं सिर्फ एक किसी को घर अपना रेंट पे दे रहा हूँ, जो मैं चीज रेंट पे दे रहा हूँ वो घर है जिसमें लोग आके रहने वाले हैं. They are not carrying out any business. It is not a business entity who is taking it on rent. A residential unit being let out for a residential stay purpose. Only that is considered, that is given an exemption under the law, under the notification 12/2017. जब भी हम लोग exemptions के बारे में पढ़ेंगे, I'll tell you what exemption entry is. But just to give an illustration that renting and leasing is otherwise going to be taxable, but in certain circumstances, there might be an exemption. For instance, normally warehouse rent पे देना ये taxable होता है, मतलब storage godown देना rent पे ये taxable होता है. But if I have given a warehouse to store agricultural produce, then it is exempted. So this is how the slight difference, this is how the exemptions and exceptions stand out in the law. Clear enough? Okay. Now transfer. Now friends, usually transfer is a word more associated when it is considered as transfer of technology or transfer of rights to use something. So let's say that I am particularly taking an example that when there is a transfer of technology agreement taking place. So let's say that I am owning copyrights over some drawings and designs, some drawing rather. I own a copyright, some IPR of a drawing. I am permitting somebody else to use my drawings for a temporary period. In such case, that transfer will be treated as transfer of IPR. It is being done for a temporary period. It is done for a consideration. It is in the course of furtherance of business. Fair enough. So in this case, what is going to happen that since this transfer is happening for a consideration in the course or furtherance of business, it will be liable for GST. तो एक ट्रांसफर का आपको एग्जांपल देता हूँ. So you must have seen those movies, Two States, Three Idiots, Kai Puche. Now all these movies are based on some of the other books which are written by Chetan Bhagat, author, the famous author Chetan Bhagat. So I believe, I am not sure what that actual transaction is. I believe that the producers must have taken the rights, copyrights of that story, what Chetan Bhagat has written, to make a movie on it. So this transfer of copyrights for making a commercial movie out of it, this is considered as transfer. Now there are certain exemptions again which is relating to original art and something of that sort. However, we are just putting an example perspective to that. Now the best, the one thing that we missed out was licensing. Again, licensing agreements are licensed to usages. It may be licensed to use particular, let's say that manufacturing facility मैंने किसी से लिया है, license to use the manufacturing facility, or a transfer of there is a supply by way of licensing agreement to use any say storage not storage, any technological manufacturing unit. Again, if it is happening for a consideration in the course of furtherance of business, it will be liable for GST. Now the best part, disposal. Disposal, sometimes it becomes very really something that you will keep on pondering upon, that how disposal is a transaction is considered as supply. What do you mean by disposal? Disposal as a word, normally what do you associate it with? Disposal हम लोग क्या बोलते हैं? When you are getting rid of something, maybe it is disposal by way of asset disposal, scrap sale, or anything of that sort. If you are disposing of something, but it is happening for a consideration, but it is happening in the course or furtherance of business. अभी घर में आप न्यूज़पेपर्स जमा कर करके इवेंचुअली एक दिन उसको बेच देते हो रद्दी में, बराबर? तो वो जब रद्दी में आप उसको बेच देते हो तब उसको क्या कहते हो? इट्स अ डिस्पोजल. You do get money also, so there is a consideration. But is it your business to do the disposal of this raddi every time that you do? Raddi मतलब अभी हम लोग उसको रद्दी बोलते हैं, कोई लोग उसको पस्ती बोलते हैं, कोई in some other language it may be called something else. Newspaper का bunch जब आप सेल कर देते. So whenever there is a sale of any goods, whenever there is a parting of you with any goods for a consideration, but if it is happening in the course or furtherance of business, then it is relevant to call it as a supply for the purpose of GST. So today from my business, I dispose of some assets. Then वहां पे क्या होने वाला है? Since I am disposing of certain assets from my business, if I am doing it for in the course of furtherance of business, then it will also be, mind you well, it will also be considered as a supply. It will also be considered as a supply if I'm doing it for a consideration, if I'm doing it in the course of furtherance of business. Clear? Yes? Is it clear to all of you? Nice. So now when we say that if there is a supply, and the supply का scope में क्या क्या cover हो रहा है? Supply means supply by way of, supply means and includes. Section 7 subsection 1 clause A हम लोग फिलहाल सिर्फ पढ़ रहे हैं. The extensiveness of supply can also extend further, I told, but right now we'll focus only on what section 7 subsection 1 tells. So supply means and includes all forms of supply of goods, all forms of supply of goods or services by way of sale, exchange, transfer, license, rental, lease, barter, disposal. So like I said, it is inclusive, meaning means कल को जाके कोई और word भी अगर इसमें coin in हो जाता है तो भी we should not be really surprised. Which is made or agreed to be made for a consideration in the course or furtherance of business. If all these aspects of sale, exchange, transfer वगैरह are made for a consideration, it is made in the course or furtherance of business, only then we are going to say it is considered as a supply. And only when there is a supply, there is a taxable event. And only when there is a taxable event, there can be a levy of GST. So friends, as a part of this scope of supply discussion under section 7 subsection 1 clause A, we are going to say that this is what it really covers. So I believe that this section 7 subsection 1, okay, section 7 subsection 1 clause A is what we have completed discussing now. So the thing is that today actually, as you can see, I'm not right now really sitting in my office. Today I've come to a place in Konkan in Kudal, Maharashtra, to deliver a lecture on GST, because here we have a very nice study chapter of the institute, and it's a study chapter who have a lecture series held today. So I'll be delivering one of the lectures in GST, and therefore yesterday the whole day, almost from like 12 o'clock onwards to 11 o'clock in the night, I was actually traveling, so I could not come live yesterday. And I had already told you on Friday that, beg your pardon, on Wednesday, that there is this 2 travel plans envisaged in the next 2 days. That is the reason why I'll not be able to take the lecture. However, today I feel that like today, because we are right now splitting it at a logical end. So after section 7 subsection 1A, I will be now only covering one more subsection today in the today's session, and then we will have the lecture on Sunday. That is Sunday we'll be having a lecture, because again tomorrow's day I'll be traveling, and due to these torrential rains and all, there is a traffic disruption of trains also. So yesterday also the journey, which was actually of 8 hours, it actually ended up taking 3 like 11 and a half hours. So yesterday evening my lecture was not possible. Today morning I have a time before the session, and probably after this also, if I get to have some time, I'll shoot another lecture and keep it uploaded on the YouTube, so that it will be helpful for you to have the continuity. But nonetheless, once back in the regular course, I'll ensure that every day 1 hour at least, I mean every day one lecture definitely. It may or may not be of 1 hour exactly, but there will be one lecture every day to cover the concepts and to ensure that speedily you are covering the syllabus. But I am also requesting you that since you have time at home after the lecture you have seen, please try to see the questions which are associated with it from your books and your relevant books or ICS study materials also, so that you are also equivalently prepared to ask me questions next time when we are meeting. And like I said, end of the chapter में हम लोग वैसे भी सब questions करने ही वाले discuss. Now friends, section 7 subsection 1 clause B. For the purpose of this act, the expression supply includes A तो हो गया. Now B. Import of services for a consideration, whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. Now the best part about the best part about this law is that every transaction words which are used, it has a definition. Now likewise, the word import also has got a import of service also has a definition. So where the supplier of services is located outside India, the recipient of services is located in India, and the place of supply of services is in India. Now understand this place of supply as a terminology for CA final students. Definitely there is a place of supply concept altogether there for you in the syllabus only, so we'll be covering it. For the intermediate students, I'm also telling you that place of supply in a very simple sense means place of consumption, effectively where the consumption takes place as per the law. So where the supplier's location is outside India, the place of supply and the location of recipient is in India, we say that the transaction is considered as a import of service, bringing that service in India. But supplier बाहर located है, recipient जो service ले रहा है वो India में located है, and place of supply, that is consumption, also is in India. Now you may be wondering, sir, कि obviously अगर recipient India में है तो consumption भी तो India में ही होगा. Sometimes there is a minor deviation what takes place in this. There are certain services that a supplier is located outside India, but he also provides you those services outside India. So let's say, मतलब एक आपको simple example देता हूँ that why when the otherwise will really take place. So now let's say that UK based एक कोई management trainer है. He has entered a contract into with Wipro India Limited कि भाई आपके employees को हम train करेंगे. Now, just to give a very short heads up to that, so there is a specific provision in place of supply in section 13 of the IGST Act कि अगर किसी training and management training purpose के लिए या फिर किसी ऐसे service के लिए the physical presence of the people or the recipient or the representative of recipient is relevant, then the place where the training takes place will be considered as the place of supply. मतलब performance based service बोलते हैं उसको. तो क्या हो जाएगा, ट्रेनर इज इन यूके, कौन सर्विस ले रहा है, तो विप्रो लिमिटेड ले रहा है, रेसिपिएंट इज इन इंडिया, but because their employees are going to UK and taking that training, the place of supply happens to be outside India. So अगर ऐसा होता है तो अपने import of service के definition में क्या क्या criteria था, supplier is outside India, recipient is in India, place of supply is in India. But in this case, supplier is outside India, recipient is in India, but place of supply is going outside India. So ऐसे case में legally, by way of the deeming fictions of the law, it is possible that there is a service provider providing services to an Indian company, but it is still not considered as an import of service. Why? Because the place of supply of that transaction is happening outside India. So जो शायद ये पढ़ के ऑब्वियस लगता है कि हाँ इंपोर्ट ऑफ सर्विस में तो नॉर्मली ऐसे ही होगा, सप्लायर बाहर है, रेसिपिएंट इंडिया में है, तो सप्लाई तो इंडिया में हुआ. नहीं, there are situations in law where it is possible that even though the recipient is in India, the place of supply might be outside India. And agar aisa hota hai, to it fails to be an import of service. If it fails to be an import of service, then as per 7 subsection 1 clause B, there will not be a supply in this case. So in the ordinary circumstances, if there is an import of service, for a consideration, whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. Now इसको थोड़ा हम लोग समझ लेते हैं. Now see, मैंने आपको क्या क्या बोला, supplier of services is located outside India. Supplier of services located outside India. Recipient of services is located in India. Place of supply is in India, like India. So in such case, the service are called as import of services. Services will be called as import of services. Services will be called as import of services. If this transaction is happening for a consideration, whether or not in course of business. Now friends, एग्जाम्पल्स लेते हैं, ओके? क्योंकि यहाँ पे कुछ तो अलग हुआ है कि पहले जो हमने 7(1)A में पढ़ा था कि वहां पे कंसिडरेशन भी जरूरी था एंड कोर्स और फर्दरेंस भी जरूरी था, बट यहाँ पे इट इज एन एक्सेप्शन. सो फर्स्टली एज आई टोल्ड यू कि इंपोर्ट ऑफ सर्विस होने के लिए क्या क्या जरूरी है, ये तीनों फैक्टर्स का सेटिस्फाई होना जरूरी है. ओनली देन इट विल बी कंसिडर्ड एज अ इंपोर्ट ऑफ सर्विस. It should happen for a consideration. So consideration is relevant for a transaction to be called as supply. Now, whether or not in the course of furtherance of business. Now I'll give you an example. So let's say that normal case में, मतलब आम जिंदगी जिसको हम लोग बोलते हैं, उसमें ऐसा होता है कि मतलब एक आम जिंदगी होती है, एक मेंटोस जिंदगी होती है, उसमें से आम जिंदगी, right? So let's say that UK based software company supplies software support service to Indian company in India. For consideration. Now, of course, because हम लोग इंडियन कंपनी किसी यूके बेस्ड सॉफ्टवेयर कंपनी के सर्विसेज ले रही है, दैट इज ऑब्वियसली बिकॉज दे आर यूजिंग इट फॉर बिजनेस. सो ये तो सेक्शन 7(1)B के सभी क्राइटेरिया फुलफिल कर रहा है. ये सेक्शन 7(1)B के सभी क्राइटेरिया फुलफिल कर रहा है कि ओके, देयर इज एन इंपोर्ट ऑफ सर्विस बिकॉज सप्लायर इज लोकेटेड आउटसाइड इंडिया, रेसिपिएंट इज लोकेटेड इन इंडिया, प्लेस ऑफ सप्लाई इज आल्सो इंडिया. वो मैं आपको बोल देता हूँ. It is happening for a consideration. It is in the course or furtherance of business. तो भाई 7(1)B के हिसाब से एकदम normal vanilla transaction, it is liable for GST because it is a supply. Now we'll consider another example. Netflix USA gives subscription at rupees 500 per month, 500 per month to Indian subscriber, Mr. Vaibhav. Mr. Vaibhav. Now see, what is happening over here? Netflix USA दे रहा है, तो अभी हम लोग वो Netflix India को बाजू में रखते हैं. Netflix USA is providing a service on consideration. Is there an import of service? The answer is yes. Why? Supplier of services located outside India. Recipient of services is located in India. Place of supply is also India. वो भी मैं आपको बोल देता हूँ. It is happening for a consideration. Yes. Now the major question is that bhai, whether it is for the purpose of business, whether this is happening for the purpose of business, the answer is no. Who uses Netflix for the purpose of business? But even though this import of service is happening for a consideration, but it is not happening for furtherance of business, still it will be considered as a supply for the purpose of section 7(1)(b). And because it is a supply, it will be liable for GST. Are you getting it? So section 7(1)(a) में क्या था? वो सब supply by sale, exchange, transfer वगैरह वगैरह for a consideration in the course of furtherance of business. 7(1)(b) क्या बोलता है? Import of service for a consideration, whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. So one example, in the case of furtherance of business, by yes taxable है. I mean by yes supply है. Taxable है कि नहीं वो तो हम लोग को obviously समझेगा. अगर वो exempt नहीं है तो वो taxable है. Supply by way of import of service for a consideration not for the purpose of business, still it is considered as import of service. ठीक है? So friends, since as I told you that we are completing two subsections today, 7(1)(a) and 7(1)(b. Therefore, at this juncture, I wish to conclude with the today's session. I request you to kindly go and study and read and ask me questions. Keep sending your messages, emails. My email ID is aumkargadgil@gmail.com. Okay, aumkargadgil@gmail.com. As I told you that the notes PDF के लिए I have received emails from a few students. I'll be sending them the notes very shortly. There is some compilation and there is some compilation which is going on regarding the questions. एक 2 से 3 दिन में वो खत्म हो जाएगा. I will give you those PDF files on your emails. Till that time, you can very much refer to the lectures. मैं इसमें वो PDF put up कर ही रहा हूँ. ये भी पुट अप कर ही रहा हूँ. व्हाइट बोर्ड के जो चीज है, प्लीज टेक द स्क्रीनशॉट्स ऑफ दीज. ये आपको पढ़ते वक्त एग्जांपल्स लिखने के लिए वगैरह इलस्ट्रेशन जरूरी है. सो थैंक यू सो मच फॉर बीइंग देयर एंड keep spreading the word. Whomsoever wants to learn, it's very much available there on YouTube free. So thank you so much. Do let me know if you have any inputs to be given to me. If you feel that if you want that, okay sir, मेरे को कुछ चीज वापस एक बार समझा दीजिए, तो मैं कोई specific time निकाल के एक doubt session रख दूंगा. But do let me know. So thank you so much. Have a good day ahead. Bye bye. Take care. Jai Hind.